Ciao Verona, and that's the extent of my Italian. So excuse me, the talk will be in English. Next time I come, I promise to give a talk in Italian because I'm trying to learn, but it's going very slowly. So before I introduce myself, but you already introduced me, I wanted to say a few words from all the speakers here. First of all, it's a huge pleasure for me to welcome you here on first Vueday Italy conference. And don't be afraid to come up to any of us. We are here for you, not for our own pleasure. You came here to get to know something about Vue.js, to get connections, to get to know other developers, also members of community, library authors, community members. So it's our aim to be available for you all the time. At any point, just come up to us and we are open for any discussion you want. Also, we would like to introduce you to how actually Vue.js community looks like, because in Italy, Vue.js community isn't really very big. I know there's a group in Milano, but I haven't been there yet to join the meetings. We organized a Vue.js meeting in Salerno, but it was only one for now. It was a very good one. But wherever I went in Italy, in Catania, Napoli, Florencia, Bologna, I had a problem to find many Vue.js developers. So I hope that the community will be growing from now on. And so we wanted to show you that we as a group, as a Vue.js community, we try to stick together and to take care of each other. And by we, I don't mean only the speakers, I don't mean only the core team members, I mean not only the event organizers, library authors, content creators, because we all as a group create a Vue.js community. And like the original title of my talk was going to say, Vuenited we stand. Finally, I wanted to thank all the organizers in the name of our group, especially Julia, Cesare, and Daniel. Not only for making this conference a thing, but also for providing a safe environment in which all of us, regardless of who we are, we can enjoy this conference on equal terms. I was very happy to see the code of conduct. You are doing an amazing job. I was here yesterday on Rugby Day. You have spent a lot of time preparing the event, and I hope you will also make good memories here during Vue Day and will remember this conference with a smile. So before the event, before the conference, I was checking the schedule to get to know who will be speaking today. And all the time when there was new speaker announced, I thought, what a great lineup we have. Because I may be the only core team member here, but trust me, people who will be speaking today are not random people. In terms of knowledge, skills, and quality of their talks, they are far above my level. And I'm happy that I'm speaking at the very beginning, because then I will have all day to just relax, enjoy myself, and listen to all my friends who will be speaking after me. Okay, my name is Darek Gusto Wedrychowski. It's difficult to pronounce for everybody. Everybody asks me how to do it, so don't even try that. Friends in the Vue.js community call me Gusto, and I consider you all my friends as members of the community, so feel free to call me that. I come from Kraków in Poland, and it's a town of two famous people who came to Italy before me. The Pope, John Paul II, and AC Milan striker Krzysztof Piątek. How many of you are from Milano or Genoa? A lot of people. I'm a member of Vue.js core team, but I'm not one of those nerdy people who write actual code. I'm more of a community guy. My main responsibility in the team is to reach out to event organizers, to library authors, content creators like blog authors or course writers, and regular users, both advanced and beginners. I would be very happy if you follow me on Twitter. I miss some 30 or 40 followers to get 1,000, and first 1,000 on Twitter is very difficult to find, so please. You can meet me on chat.vue.js.org, which is more important, actually. It's the main way in which Vue.js community actually communicates with each other than Twitter. We have almost 60,000 registered users on Discord, and it's not all of the Vue.js users. What we in the core team use as the main measure to check the size of the community is usually the amount of people who use official Vue dev tools for Firefox or for Chrome. So right now it's around 800,000 of users of Vue dev tools. So it's a big community. I'm very happy about it. On the chat, we have Italian channel, so if you prefer to speak in Italian, we welcome you too. You can find core team members, you can find authors of video courses, of tutorials, of event organizers around the world, and from time to time we are doing Q&A sessions. And the next one is actually in a few days from now, on Monday at 6 p.m. We'll be talking about testing Vue.js with Eddie Erburg, I never remember how to pronounce his surname, and Alex Hover. Both are authors of great books about testing, and Ed is additionally an author of Vue Test Utils library, so it's the biggest authority about testing in Vue.js, so you are all welcome to join us on Monday. So let's start finally the talk, and before I start, yesterday with our friends we prepared this hat. Over here you will find illustrations done by other speakers, and over here too. And there's still a lot of space on it. I'm sorry, it's with crayons, so it's not visible from far away. It's an accessibility issue. And accessibility is actually very important because, like I mentioned, I have problems with accessibility with my hearing. So it's not that I want to make a joke out of it. It's really important for me. My actual idea for business for the upcoming years is to create a video gaming platform for people with visual disorder, for blind people, because when you are blind, you cannot really play on PlayStation. So it's something that I would like to create myself. So there's a lot of space for you to add something here. I will have crayons on me all the time, and if you want to add something from you, it will be it can be your first contribution to Vue.js. Okay, so for us as Vue.js core team, but also Vue.js community or the library authors, Vue.js is kind of like a child that is growing up to be an adult. And let's discuss what does it actually mean. Because when it's a small child, when it was Vue.js 1, it wanders around to explore the world of possibilities. Like Pinocchio. Pinocchio, when he was created by Geppetto, he came out, met some people, some of them were shady, and getting to know the world, exploring it, he made a lot of mistakes. Like all the childs make mistakes, and we also did some mistakes with Vue.js 1. With Vue.js 2, we tried to improve on that. And the same situation now when we will be when we create Vue.js 3, we try to improve on what we learned, creating Vue.js 1, Vue.js 2, and fix all the problems that the community had with Vue.js. When it grows, it learns the rules of how to live. It goes to the school and gets new friends. And that's the moment when we released Vue.js 2, the community suddenly became much bigger. And now it's time for Vue.js 3. So when the kid finally becomes an adult, it's time to get a job. And our goal with Vue.js 3 is to make the situation on the job market much better. If I can ask you, how many of you actually use Vue.js at work? And this is the best result I had around whole Europe. and Toronto and Africa too. So I'm very happy with that, and I didn't expect it totally. So we want Vue.js to be strong on the job market, but yeah, now I don't know what to say. If I can ask a few additional questions, how many of you were using Vue.js in the times of Vue.js 1? Okay. How many of you use Next.js? Okay. And a tricky question, how many of you use Vueify? A lot. It's feedback for my friend who is maintainer of Vueify. Okay, so we know about Pinocchio, but there are some other kids that I wanted to introduce you. So please let me meet React and Angular. And it's not that I want to make fun of them. There's actually a very important reason why I show Dexter and Mandark. Because Dexter and Mandark, even when they were little kids, they all the time tried to behave like an adult. And that was the situation with both Angular and both React, because even when they were very fresh libraries, they had the responsibility to be production ready all the time, because both Angular and React were used from the very early stage, were used to create very big libraries. But with Vue.js, it's different. So Vue.js is more like that. Vue.js started as more of an experiment, and even now, people who use Vue.js even at work tell me all the time that I would like to keep all the freedom I have when I develop with Vue.js, that I'm missing some features we had in Vue.js 1 when there was much more flexibility with the event system, and we could do everything we wanted. But it's not always so easy, because on the job market in bigger companies, there are also some restraints, like, for example, using TypeScript or using all the ways of programming with best practices that limit how you actually use the libraries. So let's go to details of what I mentioned. So let's go back in time with our DeLorean to 2015, when it was time of Vue.js 1. It was what I call a wild west of Vue.js ecosystem, because at the beginning there was chaos. Nobody took care about best practices, because we didn't know how to use Vue.js. Like I mentioned, it was the experimental phase. It's like a kid that when kids sees a hill, it wants to get on the hill and see what's on the other side. And Vue.js developers in times of Vue.js, what we saw after the hill was the next hill. There wasn't a town or something else. We just saw the next hill. So library authors were trying to test what's actually possible with Vue.js. So a lot of the libraries weren't really ready for production use. Now it's much better, so we're trying to keep in touch with all the library authors. We have a few over here. And the other side of Vue.js 1 was what I called Wild East, because half of the ecosystem was Chinese. Vue.js originated from, was written by Ivan Yu, who had always a lot of followers in China. Friends in big companies like Alibaba were introducing Vue.js to their co-workers, to their developer friends, and quickly Vue.js became more popular in China than in Western world in the Vue.js times. And we had a huge problem, because if we find the library only with Chinese documentation, with Chinese GitHub issues, it's difficult for us to use it if we don't know Chinese. At least I don't know, maybe I will get surprised again, like with a question about how many of you use Vue.js at work. So 2016, at the very end of the year, was already the release of Vue.js 2. And there were three main things about Vue.js that I wanted to mention. First of all, we tried to take all what was the best about other frameworks. Because, like I mentioned, the kid at some point goes to school. And in school, we try to learn from others, not only from the teachers, but also from other students. This month, last month, I spent 2 weeks in Morocco, and I was given a workshop and a talk in a school called Lead School, like 1337 school. And what surprised me about this school, that there was no teachers in the school. The only adults were the staff. They used to call themselves staff. So all the kids were, well, not exactly kids, they were from 18 to 30 years old. And they were learning only by programming every day. The method to check if what they learned is proper was by passing the test for the assignment they had. And the only way to correct it was with their peers, with other students who were doing the same assignment. And well, that was not planned to talk about, but I had a great experience there. Take what's best from other frameworks. Like from React, we took Virtual DOM, we took Flux architecture, which now we use as Vuex. But in Vue.js 1 times, a lot of developers were actually using Redux. Now almost nobody uses Redux with Vue.js. And Vuex was very simplified between the Vue 1 and Vue 2 release, and that's what we also plan for Vue 3. In Vue 3, Vuex will also be simplified in comparison to how it is now, especially because we are planning to get rid of the division between the actions and the mutations. Old system of reactivity with Vue.js, the implementation didn't allow us to actually track asynchronous actions in Vue DevTools. But now with a new system, it will be possible. So the only reason for division between actions and mutations will be gone. And if some of you worry about changes in API with Vue.js, the API of Vue won't change much. Most of it will stay, but with Vuex there may be some changes because we're trying to simplify it. So simplified data flow, with which I refer to how it was in the Vue.js 1. In Vue.js 1, the event system was much more flexible because if we emitted an event, we could listen to this event all the way down and all the way to the top across across all the parent and all the children components. Now in Vue.js 2, core team members decided that it's not a good practice because it was very difficult to reason about the library. So that was a mistake that we did with Vue.js 1, but with Vue.js 2 we had to improve on that. And finally, we made another mistake, which some people were very happy about it, but there was a decision to take. Should we develop Vue.js? Okay, I'm telling all the time we. I wasn't a core team member back on those types, but I feel like I was a member of community. So we decided to write Vue.js with Flow, which back then was pretty hyped because Flow was created by Facebook, and all the Facebook libraries, just React, were very popular. Turned out, a year, 2 years later, nobody uses Flow anymore. So with Vue.js 3, we will rewrite everything in TypeScript. But just like you don't have to use Flow in your applications at this time, with Vue.js 3 you won't have to to use TypeScript. I see that a lot of time passed because I was doing digressions, and we have a lot of content that I wanted to show. I wanted to show some code, so we go quickly for the next slides. 2017 was the rise of Vue.js 2, so it was getting more and more popular. We finally had some professional learning resources. The community was growing. We had our first conferences, first meetups. In the ecosystem, libraries like Next showed up that made a big change. But at this point, the main showstopper for many developers was that the ecosystem was divided between people who were using old traditional setup with multi-page websites created with Ruby on Rails, PHP, jQuery, and people who were developing single-page applications. And those people back in 2017 didn't really have a common ground on which they could communicate. Now it's different. 2018 is the year when Vue.js 2 got mature, the ecosystem got mature. So now it's much better. And from this slide, my favorite thing is the move in the community towards diversity. Probably I won't have time to tell you about Vuvixen's initiative, but I hope Gezi will have a moment about it. So right now, we are in 2019. It's the time when we develop Vue.js 3. So where is Vue.js 3? Because we are talking about it all the time, but nobody sees it because the repository is hidden. You cannot see what's inside. So we have official Vue.js 3 roadmap, which is available at roadmap.vue.js.org. And let's take a look at it. Because there are plenty of steps to be taken before we can finally release Vue.js, and there is no clear time when we will release it. Ivan says that we will release it when it's ready, but we hope that in the autumn of 2019 it will be already ready to use. So let's check what we have there. How do I use it? Oh, it works. Okay, so we already released Vue 2.6, and in the first quarter we were rewriting all the Vue.js features from version 2 to version 3. In the second quarter, which just started, we'll be taking care of server-side rendering, of rewriting documentation to use all the new features. And it's very important that all those new features will be discussed with the community, with a system that we'll talk about in a moment. And as you can see, we plan to release alpha by the end of at the beginning of summer, and then to work on router, on Vue router, on Vuex, on CLI to make it work with Vue 3, and finally, somewhere at the second quarter, so at the autumn, we plan to make the official release. And to be honest, I'm not waiting for Vue 3. And it's not because I know what will be in Vue 3, because you will get to know it in a moment. It's because all the most important changes around Vue.js are already happening. They started to happen half of a year ago, and we will discuss some of those stuff. So first thing I wanted to talk about is a Vue.js Summit. It's a week, it's an event that lasted a week. It was in the last summer in Poland, and it was a meeting of core team members sponsored from Open Collective Fund. Can I ask how many of you are a sponsor of Vue.js through Open Collective? Okay, so I sponsored the event for myself. Thanks a lot. How many of you support one of core team members on Patreon? I don't have Patreon. Thanks, Ivan. So During this week, we're working on different features like Vue CLI, Vue DevTools, extensions for official newsletter. We weren't working on many features for Vue 2.6 other than JSX functionality. You can see Nick sitting over there. He's our JSX specialist in the team. We're working a lot on documentation, but if you find one missing element I will give you a hint. The missing element, it's not me because I was taking the photo. So there was no Ivan. Ivan at this point was in the United States. His wife was expecting a child, so we were moving to bigger apartment. But did it matter? Were there some decisions that we couldn't take because Ivan was not there and we had to call him, hey, Ivan, can we do that because we need your permission? No, it wasn't like that. If we wanted to do something, we're just doing it. There were 10 of people in the room, and there was no point, reaching out to Ivan to get any permission. And a lot of people in the Vue.js community think that without Ivan, there won't be Vue.js. So it's not like that. There's a whole team working behind the scene for Vue.js. But there are still a lot of improvements that we can make we can make. So one of the main goals for 2019 for Vue.js free release is removing the bottleneck. By bottleneck, I mean that a lot of people think that Vue.js is all about Ivan. So we want not only to make Vue.js free faster and smaller, but also more friendly to contributors, to people like you, to developers like you, who can join us in creating Vue.js together. If you check GitHub statistics, you can find that the React, that Angular, don't have more stars than Vue.js, but what they have much more than Vue.js is contributors to the core library, to all the ecosystem libraries. So there are a few ways in which we can achieve it. We'll release a new guide for contributors, because at this point, if you ask me how to contribute to Vue.js, I usually start saying, okay, you can fix some typos in documentation because we have a lot of them. And the next points on the list we will discuss in more details. First of all, request for comments. So these are of documents in a GitHub repository, which are already released. Some of them are in different branches because they are still discussed internally. And they are documents that could provide a consistent and controlled path for requesting or submitting new features. So what does it mean? Each of such documents presents 7 points: a summary of the issue, some basic example, motivation behind the change. For example, if we want to introduce some new feature, for example, detailed design of how it should look like, drawbacks if there are potential issues with this solution, and what are the alternative solutions, because when we think about some new feature, there are always some other ideas we have, and we have to choose which one is actually best for the community. And adoption strategy. So how do we plan to actually implement it in Vue.js, and at which point if it should be at Vue.js free or Vue.js 3.1 or as a separate library? Or wait. Okay, I'm sorry for that. Next point, Monorepo architecture. Monorepo architecture is a way to Monorepo architecture is a way to provide separate packages for each feature of Vue.js. With Vue 2, one of the biggest problems for contributors was a steep learning curve. If you wanted to contribute to core packages, Vue.js, Vuex, Vue Router, and especially for core Vue.js library, if you wanted to contribute to just a single feature, let's say vModel or some other directive, you still needed to learn whole code base and to be aware of all the places in the code which could be potentially affected by your simple change. So with Monorepo architecture, we try to prevent that. By definition, a Monorepo is a repository which contains more than one project. In the case of JavaScript, there will be multiple NPM packages, and they are different than how Vue.js source code works now, because all those small packages have much smaller scope and only single responsibilities. So if you try to contribute to such a feature, you don't need to know all the code base. You just need to understand the code necessary for this directive or this component, and you can go with that. Among other advantages, such packages are much easier to test, much easier to understand for people who don't contribute to code, but who just want to understand how Vue.js works under the hood. And what is also important, it's already happening with Vue.js ecosystem. Vue CLI is written with such Vue CLI 3 is written with such architecture. Also, Nux is written with Monorepo architecture. Right now, it was rewritten last year. And more projects in the community are moving to this architecture. If you want to check how you can move your own products, your own projects with Vue.js, please check one of the example repositories by Chris. Chris is one of the authors of official documentation, official style guide for Vue.js cookbook. And another great example of using Vue.js at the enterprise level, Vue Enterprise Boilerplate, which I recommend you. Next feature is connected with it. So tree shaking is also related to the new build system and architecture of Vue.js. Tree shaking is one of the most important performance optimizations in JavaScript. But what does it mean, tree shaking Vue features? So imagine that at the current state of how contributing to Vue.js looks like. Imagine that you have an idea for a new functionality, for a new directive, and you want to introduce it, to add it to Vue core library, for example, in Vue 2.7. So somebody like you could tell you, okay, your idea is very good, I would personally use it, but I don't think that a lot of people over here will use the same feature because they don't have a use case for that. And if we add it to Vue.js library, the bundle will be bigger for everybody. And we are very proud that Vue.js bundle is so small. And with Vue.js 3, we want to make it even smaller. So where do we fit all those features? So with tree shaking Vue features, we'll be able to load to the bundle only the features, only the directives, components, other parts of Vue.js core elements that are actually used by developers in the code of the project. So next time you come to me to tell me, okay, I have a good idea, I will tell you, why not? Because we can add it in a way that it won't make the library bigger for everybody. Next thing, and you may recognize it from Angular, from backend frameworks, it's the time-based release cycle. And I have here 6 months, it's a typo, I mentioned, I make a lot of typos. So we'll be releasing minor version every 3 months. And there will be alpha, beta, and release candidate. And it's very important, especially for library authors or for creators of bigger projects. Because if you maintain a library, you want to check if it will work correctly with the new version of Vue.js the fastest as possible before actually your users start using a new version of Vue.js. Same situation with taking advantage of new features introduced to Vue.js. If in the new Vue.js release there is some new feature and you want to use it in your library, then the fastest you get the fastest you can test it, how it will work with your code, the fastest your library will be released. So a day, 2 days after the release of next version of Vue.js, you could introduce a new version of your library. Additionally, after a new major like Vue 3 is released, the previous minor version will get long-term support status for next year and a half. So it will release all the security patches, all other patches that are necessary. So if you plan to stick to Vue.js 2 for 18 months, so you have guarantee. Thanks a lot. You have guarantee that it will be still usable. I got a notice that we have only 10 minutes, so why don't we look at some code? And okay, happy developers make happy libraries. If if you remember one thing from the talk, please remember this line. Plugin architecture. Alex will be talking more about it because. In Next.js, we also have Next modules, which are also plugins. And I have 10 minutes, so let me spend one of those minutes on Natalia Tepluhina. Natalia is doing a talk like mine today about RxJS, but she's doing it in Romania. Today, in Romania, in Cluj, there's another conference called the JS Heroes. There are a few our friends over there, Sarah Drasner, Guillaume Shaw, Dobromir Christoph, and Natalia. And why I'm mentioning her? Because Natalia is a perfect role model for all of us in Vue.js community. Just like many other developers using Vue.js, she couldn't use it in her daily job because she was working with Angular. And that's why I'm so very happy that here in the room, there are so many of you actually using Vue.js at work. But Natalia didn't give up. She started sharing her knowledge with the community, doing the workshops as a CTO of Vue Vixen. She started giving meetup talks, writing tutorials in the blogs, and she started to work on official documentation, not only the Vue CLI plugins that we saw on the previous slide, but also now she's working on a special chapter for Vue.js guide about best practices and project architecture in bigger projects. So did Natalia have to actually look far for a Vue.js related job? No, because at some point after she started contributing to Vue.js, it was the job looking for her. Multiple teams around the world started competing to sign her to their companies, and until the last moment, and now she's working with GitLab with her beloved Vue.js. So. She will be talking in Romania in 2 hours from now, so if I can ask you to ping her on Twitter, wish her good luck, I would be very happy about it. Next thing, community guide, it's a work in progress, so I won't have the time to talk about it, so let's just, I will ask you to wait for the community guide to be released. It's additional documentation about all the kind of things that you won't find in official documentation, like, for example, the situational job market, which learning materials are good for our type of learning, which libraries are good for our use cases. The state of Vue.js, it's a PDF document, update of document from 2017. Most of you actually works with Vue.js, which is once again makes me very happy, but still show this document to your boss to tell him or her that it was the right decision to use Vue.js. So finally, let's take let's take a look at some code. First of all, let's start with class API for Vue.js. You may recognize class-based API from a library called Vue class component, which is mainly used by people who use Vue.js with TypeScript. But TypeScript implementation in Vue 2 is not the best. With Vue 3, we are rewriting all the code base into TypeScript. And we are planning to make the class API a core feature, but it's absolutely optional. So if you still prefer to use Object API, there are no downside to it. You can still use Object API, and even with TypeScript, if you want, then it will still look good. So this is how it looks like. Right now. You can notice that we can create the hooks in a similar way. Instead of data object, data function, we have just assignments. We can use getters instead of computed properties, and we can create functions, create methods as simple functions inside of a class. So there are not many big differences. The differences start when you start using TypeScript. But if you use TypeScript, that you probably already know this code base. Next thing that will change is the rewrite of reactivity system. And what's important, we plan this rewrite not only for Vue 3, but also for Vue 2.6. There will be a patch released, a separate version released at the end of the year, which will provide the new reactivity system back to Vue.js 2. The biggest advantage of the new reactivity system is that all the reactivity issues that we have right now, that we cannot properly work with arrays, with objects, because the changes don't get other computed properties don't get notified about those changes. So with proxy-based reactivity, it will be changed. Proxy is one of the features of ES6, and with Vue 2, we are still using ES5 to get better support in all the browsers. So instead of using $set like we use in Vue 2.6, we're just able to use this username, apply the new value, and it will work. So it's, I'm sorry, it will be much easier to follow. But it's not the end of the changes about reactivity. What many users were lacking, for example, from frameworks like Knockout. Thanks a lot. Knockout is a very old framework, but it had this great idea to expose the reactivity system for everybody to use. So with Vue.js 3, you'll be also able to do something like that. If you want to use reactivity system outside of the components, you could just import state and the computed function, watch function from Vue.js reactivity system, and you can use it to apply the Vue.js reactivity system to all kinds of data coming from your API or from your JSON objects or whatever other resource you have. Another change that we are planning, and I will tell you why this change is important in a moment. From now on, we'll be able to dynamically inject lifecycle hooks into our components. So, for example, over here, in before create hook, we can define a new unmounted hook and a new unmounted hook. So, in before create, we'll be able to decide based on some past data, for example, data passed from props, that we want mounted to behave differently. And we'll be able to use it when we generate new components. And the main use case for that will be to allow us to use a new composition pattern with Vue.js. The main composition patterns with Vue 2 are using mixins, using scope slots, passing data as passing props to parent, and getting the events back to the parent. But mixins and even scope slots have some issues, have some downsides to them. First of all, it's not easy to test them. It's not easy to to understand all the code, because they are in multiple different files, and it's inside of your component you don't actually have any feedback of what data property or what function comes from which source. But with the new composition pattern we try to change it. I will show you two pieces of code. This is the first file, and in the first file, we will be exporting a new function called use mouse position. So instead of our mixin, we would write such a function. You can notice here that just like we were defining our new dynamic hooks before created, here we define them in external function. We'll add the event listeners and remove event listeners based on that. And how can we use it in our component? So we'll first import use mouse position from wherever it is in our code, and we will apply it in data. So inside of our data, we'll know that property X, property Y are coming from this exact function, instead of how it looks like in mixins, where you don't know which property, which lifecycle hook, which method comes from which part of the mixins of the system. Maybe through provide inject, maybe from some other way. Similar way, if you try to pass a method through props, you wouldn't have any feedback of where it comes from, even in Vue DevTools. So here you can see that X and Y come from use mouse position, so you can just reach out to this file and test everything. And this method of composing components will be recommended over mixins, over scope slots in Vue 3. So it's the end of my time right now. Right, Daniel? So, grazie. You can follow me on Twitter. You can meet me on Vue.js chat. I'm very happy for invitation, and please listen to our next speakers. There's no time for questions because I took all my time. So, thanks you again, and have a good conference.